Hey everyone, my name is Ryan Doble. I am a university student in Toronto who's studying film, and I want to give you 10 tips which are going to help you take amazing short films. Now, short films are incredibly complex. There are so many different aspects which you have to consider, but these tips go in addition to the whole process of creating short films. So these are just different things that can help you take your short film to the next level. By the way, pause for a second. I just want to point out this hair. Don't worry, it's getting a cut tomorrow. I've only got an hour today here at the studio before I gotta head back to the city, so I want to make use of it as much as possible, but this hair situation is gonna get fixed tomorrow. Okay, so the first tip, be mindful of sound design. Sound is absolutely everything when it comes to film. You could have okay visuals, but if the sound is off, no. You may have noticed this even here on YouTube. If you're watching a video where the sound quality sucks, it's so difficult to make it through the entire video. The same is applied to short films, but with sound design. So you want to have footsteps. If you're pouring water, you want to have the sound of water pouring. Here's an example of a film that I showed on this YouTube channel where I was testing out a camera when I made it. I'll play a few seconds of it with sound design at first, and then without any of the sound design, just the video. You'll see how much more the added in sound effects of pouring water, mixing, that kind of thing, what a big effect it creates on the actual film. Here we go. Crazy, right? It adds so much. Anyways, let's move on to the next tip. Engage the audience from the start. This is incredibly important because with a short film, you don't have that much time to build this engagement. You got to get the engagement within the first few seconds of the film. If you grab the viewer's attention within the first few seconds, now they're going to be more likely to stay and view your entire short film rather than just skipping it and moving on to the next one. Okay, third tip. Aspect ratio. Now, this is really interesting. I've only uploaded my YouTube videos in 16:9, but when it comes to the different creative stuff that I've done before, like films and that kind of thing, play around with your aspect ratio. There's a number of different aspect ratios which are acceptable, and they each have and carry a different meaning. For example, I made this little movie of a Montreal trip that I recorded using an old camera, and the whole point was to be authentic, have that old vintage feel. That 4:3 aspect ratio fits so much better than a whole bunch of the common ratios that you have nowadays for different cinematic films. For example, 2.39:1. I mean, that's incredibly wide, and for a film that you want to look vintage, it doesn't really fit. Play around with the aspect ratio that is right for your film, and don't be afraid to use old school aspect ratios. If you want an old school feel, it might be a good idea to go with something like that. Not everything has to be so widescreen as everything is nowadays. The tighter aspect ratio might also give you a better look, or you might want to go extra wide. Now, this is where your creativity comes in. Play around. That's my tip. Okay, tip number 4, limit the dialogue. Use dialogue when it's necessary, but sometimes less is more. You could tell a lot from a film just from its visuals. Use establishing shots, for example. Change up the angles, get a whole bunch of variety with that. You don't need to use dialogue to be able to relay different parts of your film. It's not all that necessary, and sometimes it's just tiring listening to dialogue. Less is more. Okay, tip number 5. Test your film with a test audience before it's too late. Now, I may have fallen in this trap before. I just created a short film and I just went from 0 to 100 all on my own, and I was like, yes, this is amazing. And then I just submitted it, and my friends had a lot of really good ideas that I could have used in my film had I shown it to them before I submitted it. The same thing can be applied with your short film. Your friends, family, anyone who's viewing it might have some really good ideas that you might have just overlooked. Or the storyline might even not make sense to the average viewer, but because you're the one who's creating the film, it makes sense to you. Testing it out with a variety of people will then ensure that you have a film that makes sense and is enjoyable to watch. And if there's any constructive criticism that they have, you can apply that before it's too late and your film is out, your film's uploaded, that kind of thing. Definitely consider getting a test audience, and it could be anyone, friends, family, relatives. Number 6, pacing. Focus on your pacing, especially when it comes to editing. Pacing is everything. Actually, sorry, that's wrong. Story is everything, but pacing comes second. Pacing is what takes your film from here to here. Have you ever watched a film where it just seemed so perfectly edited that it was just like, wow, this is satisfying to watch? That's pacing. Now, the pacing could be in editing. It could also be in the way that your story is being told. So you want to make sure that your storyline as well has good pacing before you even shoot. 7, timing. This is closely connected with pacing. If you're shooting a short film, you want to make sure that it's still a short film. And also, you don't want it to be too short. It depends, of course, on what you're trying to achieve. Now, as I mentioned earlier, pacing and timing go hand in hand. So you want to make sure when you're creating the storyline, you don't want it to drag on for too long and make people sit through a 20-minute movie when it really could have just been a 10-minute. Make sure you have an idea of how long you want your film to be, but don't stretch it out in order to make it to fit that time, and don't try to condense it either if you have space for 15 minutes but you're trying to squish it into 10. Use the time that you need, but don't make it stretch on for too long. Now, this next tip, I can't believe it's a tip, but play with color grading. I can't believe the amount of people who shoot short films who just leave the color as it is out of camera. Color adds so much to a film. I personally prefer cooler tones. I make all of my stuff nice and cool, but sometimes if you're trying to create a warm, homey feel, play around with the color, make it a little bit warmer, watch your white balance, but then also in editing, make sure to color grade your footage so that it all matches with each other and looks homey. Now, in the short film that I showed just prior to this, I had the camera on auto for the color and I didn't touch it because I wanted to show what that camera could do automatically. But for my short films that are more real short films, like actual creative projects, I make sure to color the footage exactly the way that I want it, and I focus on that carefully. Tip number 9, plan. Planning is super important when it comes to shooting a short film, because I can't believe how terribly my first short film went. Oh my gosh. So, story time. My first project was a short film that I was supposed to create using this old Bolex camera. You wind it up, that kind of thing. And I had an idea for just the idea of the film. I had nothing else planned. I had a few shots that I had drawn out, but I didn't like any of them. I didn't go with any of that. I just decided, you know what? I'm gonna go and I'm gonna shoot this film when the time comes. Terrible idea. I got my camera and I realized, oh my gosh, I need an actor for this film. I thought maybe I could be the actor because I just put the camera on a tripod, let it film, and then I go do the acting. But I realized this is a Bolex. This is a camera that you gotta go, you can't do that. You have to be behind the camera. You gotta hold the button. You gotta make sure your eye is up on against the viewfinder. Yeah, did not plan that out too well. So what ended up happening is I was looking for an actor. The sun was going down quick. I had only 200 ISO film, so the film was it would be useless at night, and I didn't have lights that I planned to use either. All the lights that I had were here at the studio, and the studio, by the way, is an hour and a half away from Toronto where I was filming. So anyways, all in all, the film ended up turning out, I mean, had I planned it, it would have been a billion times better. Luckily, it still turned out, but then again, I was lucky that it turned out. That film did not go at all as I envisioned, and that's because I didn't have anything planned out. I just winged it, and it showed. Now, an idea for what you could do for planning is creating a storyboard where you just sketch out what each of your shots are going to look like, or you have a vision image, that kind of thing, and plan out where you're going to do it, who's going to be on set, who's going to be helping you out. You might want to have an assistant, that kind of thing. Who's doing sound? What kind of sound would you want to use? What kind of lenses are you going to use? Also make sure that you can film at the location that you're filming at. You don't want to get kicked out. All of that is really important to plan ahead of time so that you have a smooth shoot and it shows in the final product. Now, the last tip is to know your lighting. Know how lights work and know how you can use them to your advantage to better express the emotion that you're trying to convey through your film. My hair keeps going in my eyes. It's really annoying me. Oh, I can't wait for that haircut. You might want to use dramatic lighting, harsh lighting to create an unsettling feel, maybe. You might want to have just rim lighting if you want something to be romantic. Maybe you want soft lights, or maybe you want natural light. Natural light is always beautiful, but make sure you're using it when you want it. Natural light might not be applicable for the story you're telling, or maybe it's exactly what you need. This connects to the planning tip. Make sure you know what you need. Make sure you're well aware of where you're shooting, that kind of thing, so that you know how you're going to do the lighting in that scenario. You might have mastered every single one of these tips. You're mindful of the sound design. You've planned everything out meticulously well in advance. You know exactly how you're using the lighting. The aspect ratio is planned out. You love it. If it has a terrible story, nobody else is going to like it. Make sure you focus on your story. And this is like a little bonus tip. This is tip number 11, but this sums everything up. If the story is not good, then unfortunately the film isn't good either. Make sure you've mastered the story and you'll be good. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it helped you out. I hope you learned a thing or two. If you did, be sure to subscribe. Check out some of my other videos. I do a whole bunch of photography, videography, film stuff. Subscribe. Maybe you'll learn some more. Maybe you like some exploring and want to check out some, or is it on this side? I think it's on this side. I always mess this up. If you want to see some urban exploration where I do street photography, click here. You're gonna see a really cool video where I explore this abandoned mall. It's weird, it's cool. I shoot with like this old CCD cat. You should check it out. You should definitely check it out. I will see you guys next time. Ciao.